Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Good to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Rick and Shipyard, for hosting this amazing event. Last night was incredible. The food, the music, the views were amazing, so thank you so much. As Rick mentioned, my name is Lee Lawrence, and I'm with Basis Technologies. We partner directly with brands to help them with their paid digital marketing efforts by providing media services as well as software solutions that are really tailored to fit their specific business needs. So, again, thanks so much for allowing us this opportunity. Adam, I'm really excited to dive into the Huntington story and to talk about how Huntington, who has been around for 157 years, has really generated brand love, especially in such a competitive and commoditized category. So, Adam, you've been with Huntington since 2010, so I think that is a really interesting place to start our conversation today, just knowing that that was a really pivotal moment in the bank's history. It was coming out of the subprime mortgage crisis. Right. So I just wanted to take a second to kick things off and see how did Huntington, I know you guys have been around since 1866, but coming out of that period, knowing that, consumers, there was a lot of fear in the market, especially when you're thinking about your relationship with your bank. A lot of banks didn't survive that period in time. How did Huntington come out of the subprime mortgage crisis, and how did you guys really reestablish your brand and identify those key differentiators that helped you grow so much in the last couple of years?
Right. Yeah. Not just survive, but we built a new foundation of brand health that we're still kind of steaming off of today, 10 years later. So that's part of this story. So I joined Huntington in 2010. Never worked in banking. I came from the agency side, where a lot of you came from, a lot of creatives. This is, by the way, great to be around this energy today. When I joined the banking industry, I was really nervous about the vibe. But we were coming off the tail of the subprime crisis. So just to give you a little bit of context, Huntington's share price going into the crisis was $23 a share, and we dropped down to $1. A lot of our competitors, National City up north, had the same situation. They were so toxic on the balance sheet that they had to get cut up and sold off. So the CEO was brand new. He was kind of brought in to right the ship. And he was a real command and control kind of human being. And he was like, look, I believe in brand. I believe in marketing. We're going to triple your budget. And we're going to go for broke because we have nothing to lose. So we're going to build the bank that we've always wanted to build. So start with the consumer, figure it out. So we looked around at the marketplace, and what we found was people were under intense economic pressure in this period. This is, again, coming off the subprime crisis, right? So they were beset by their own personal economic worries. Unemployment was high. And when it came to banking, what the banking industry had to do at this point, what a lot of our competitors did, was increase fees because they had to find a way to make money under these new regulations that the government was putting on them. The government was tightening everything up. And that's where we saw our opportunity, because we looked at where the whole category was going, what people were going to be feeling, and we said, what if we took a zig to that zag, put the customer first, and didn't worry about putting money on our balance sheet through fees, but instead won through volume, right? So we built a couple of products, right? You can't just put that story out there as, I love marketers and brand people, hope the best, they put the story out there and it's just going to work. You have to have products and services and value propositions that actually deliver on your promise. So we were the first to engineer this thing called 24-hour grace, which is an overdraft policy that gave people a day to fix it before they got a fee. When you overdraft, you're spending money that's not yours. It's like courtesy that banks provide you so that you don't get stuck with a restaurant bill and you can't leave, you have to wash dishes. So instead we said, you can overdraft and there's no fee for 24 hours. Just come in and fix it and we'll waive it. A lot of our competitors couldn't follow us down this path because it was, the analysts, Wall Street hated it. They saw too much risk in it, and banks don't love risk. But we knew by putting the customer first in this situation that we could stand out. So we did it with overdrafting, and then we did it with our checking product, right? I don't know if you remember this, but during this period, a lot of banks put minimum balances on their checking products, $500, $800. You had to have that much in your account, or you got a fee on a monthly basis. We said, no, we're going to make zero the number. So those two products drove our marketing from 2010 to about 2015. And during that period, we were the fastest acquirer of households in the country because people love the story. They love a good challenger story. You know, they love when you push against the norm on their behalf. So that really, like, you know, even in 2023, the echo of that is that DNA is deeply seated in people's memories about this brand. So when you make a move like that and you create that emotional connection, it pays dividends, and it's, you know, that's where the risk is, though. Not everyone's going to follow you. So that's the beginning of the story.
Yeah, no, I love that, and just investing back and taking that risk and betting on the consumer. I think, you know, looking at back in 2010 versus today, the market has changed pretty drastically. There is a lot of noise in the market. You know, you have your mega banks, you have your brick and mortar regional banks, but then you also have the neobanks that are coming in and trying to take a piece of the pie. You have the cryptocurrency, you have different payment solutions like Venmo that are coming in. And so it's becoming a really fragmented market, and it's becoming much more complex, and there's a lot of new shiny and exciting things that consumers are being made aware of. So with all of that in mind, I wanted to take a second just to chat about how Huntington has maintained that brand love from their consumers. How have you really maintained your customer loyalty just in a market that is increasingly more and more competitive every day, with, you know, new point solutions coming about, you know, every few weeks, I feel like.
Yeah. So we're just to set the context, like when we study the brand, like all of you do, according to a lot of third-party studies that we do right now with J.D. Power and others, like Huntington is the most trusted brand in our 12-state footprint in the Midwest. Well above J.P. Morgan, Wells, B of A, and all the regionals too. So, and trust is obviously really important in banking, right? If you don't have the trust in this industry, you're sunk. So it's interesting, like having that trust and watching what you're talking about with all the friction, all the new competitors coming in with, you know, sometimes like with Venmo, for example, a single solution but disrupting the payments industry. Or a Robinhood coming in with a single solution, but disrupting the investments industry, and watching, you know, what the competitors do, or what the consumer does. So, how do you navigate it? I mean, like we're all in the middle of a big experiment here. Silicon Valley has smelled blood in the water with financial services for like the last 10 years. They've been trying a lot of different things. Not all of them take off. They're not all successful experiments. But once in a while, you get a Venmo or a PayPal that does. We have dubbed ourselves fast followers in the tech space. So, you know, mobile deposits is a great example, right? We take pictures of our checks, and now we deposit them that way instead of having to go to the branch. You just kind of follow and see what gets the most pickup, and you don't jump onto every shiny object. And I think some of the, you know, the tried and true elements of our brand, such as the personal connection, the human connection. We talk a lot in our vision statement about being people first and then digitally powered. I mean, that's like when you think about a 150-year-old bank, right? That personal connection, the things that we're known for, like how do you hold on to that in the digital space? How do you make that felt at every channel interaction? And part of that is when you own a brand, you have to know what you're known for. You know, what you stand for is what the consumer is going to remember about you. So if you're known for being really personal and humane and putting the customer first, at each channel interaction, you know, whether it's a digital payment or anything, like how are you making that moment felt? A good example, and something we don't have today, but something I've been pushing for, is this idea of being able to FaceTime a banker at any given time through the app. You know, if I have a question, if I have a concern, I don't want to go to Google. I don't want to go to the chat option. Can I connect with a person? And can I even connect with a person 24/7? If it's Sunday night at 10:30 and my spouse and I are talking about something, would it be possible to pull up a person? Can you scale that? So that feels like a huge expense to a lot of banks, right? Why would we invest in that when we can make digital convenience the driver? But if that's where we're going to put our chips because our brand is known for this unique thing, can we stand out in that way? So again, like riding the wave of why your brand is famous in a commodity industry, like first of all, getting famous, that's really important for a specific style in a commodity industry. And then riding that wave, staying consistent. I think Mike said that a second ago. As time goes on, that'll build the trust over time. All the great brands that we know do that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I know when we were talking before, a lot of our conversation was around how important it is to stay relevant, to evolve, but also to stay within that context of the brand and your core values. And I think Huntington does an amazing job in that. And I also love hearing you talk about the relationship with bankers. It makes me think about your guys' current campaign, Money's Just the Start, where you have actual real-life Huntington customers that you're interviewing and talking about the relationship that they have with their banker. I think it's a great emotionally driven message, but I wanted to have you talk a little bit about the pivot that you guys decided to make as a brand, because I know in 2022 with your True Story campaign, it was loud, it was exciting. You had break dancers, very eye-catching, and then there was this pivot to the Money's Just the Start campaign, which is much more emotionally driven, talking about those core values of Huntington. So walk me through the decision process in terms of that pivot in your messaging and why you decided to come out this year with a much more emotionally driven message to put out in the market.
Yeah. I will say, like, when your brand is strong, one of the benefits is you earn the right to experiment a little creatively and get away with it because you already have kind of belief built in. And you can even recover from disaster really quickly too. I mean, Southwest is a great example. They had that thing happen over the holidays where we all saw pictures of bags. But their recovery was pretty quick. I mean, they had their own customers defending them, saying they're doing their best, trying to work hard to solve this. So when the pandemic hit, the great thing about this brand is that, the Huntington brand, is that we really lean into a crisis. And March 16th, the 2020, the country shut down, the world shut down. March 17th, there were conference calls all night being like, there's gonna be economic outcomes, people are gonna be hurting, whole industries are gonna shut down, what can we do to fix this? And within 3 months, we had a bunch of new innovations that the team was really excited for, not just to help people and deliver on the purpose, but to also make some money and beat out the competition on things that we didn't think they were gonna do. So we had a lot of conversations about, like, once the vaccines are widely available and the world starts to come back to life, who do we wanna be at that moment? You know, like, everything's shut down, it's all quiet now, like, who do we wanna become? And Steve, the CEO, we showed him a bunch of creative examples. We used outside of category stuff, and he really leaned into what felt like high energy, dynamic, innovative product launch type stuff. And we had products to launch, we had exciting stuff. So we were like, great, let's blast out, let's make people feel safe and like there's a future, and we'll offer these new ideas. What we didn't anticipate was that a lot of banks were doing the same thing. So we offered things like, you know, I'll give you one example, but this thing called Standby Cash. People could borrow up to $1,000 for 3 months and not pay any interest on it, as long as they paid it back on schedule within 3 months. When we launched that, Chime had a version, Fifth Third had a liquidity version. Like, we just didn't, you know, we thought we were gonna go above and beyond what they were doing, but a lot of them did the same thing. So we got caught in the noise a little bit. I think we launched early pay, get your paycheck a little bit early, a couple days early. A lot of our competitors ended up doing that. We had fee relief now, and what was funny too is I said after the pandemic, we had all this fee relief ideas. Everybody got really, all of our competitors got really humane during the pandemic. Everybody had an overdraft policy. Everybody started to relieve fees. So we were like, oh shit, our competitive advantage is going away, which is great for the consumer, but we have to reestablish ourselves. So you're right, after the pandemic, we came full force with this innovative, like stylistically different, young, trying to attract millennials, trying to attract Gen Z, and got caught in the noise. We still saw good acquisition numbers, but we just saw, we didn't see the distinction, the brand distinction that we had in the past. So we're in a bit of a retrenchment period right now. The current campaign, which my team and I, we really worried about, is a testimonial campaign, which are boring as hell in the marketing space. We all know that. So we really drove ourselves to create something interesting. We got Errol Morris to do the work, who's won Oscars for The Thin Blue Line and Fog of War, to produce testimonial work that feels honest, and it brings the brand back to its core strengths, right? We're reminding people that what you love about us is more present than ever, and distinctly different from all the digital convenience happening out in the world. So as we retrench, like we've got this project in the bank right now where we're coming up with a lot of new value propositions that we hope, again, are leapfrogging the competition. And hopefully in 24, 25, we'll be rolling those out with new vision that builds on where we are today.
That's great. I think one of the things that stood out to me too when chatting with you is also around how Huntington is structured. And you've talked a little bit about your CEO and how he's really been leaning in to your messaging and the marketing strategies that you guys are putting out there. I don't think a lot of companies, not all companies at least, have that access to upper management, to leadership, reporting directly into the CEO and having that buy-in. Sometimes it can be a challenge for marketing and branding teams to get that sign-off at that level. So I would love just to have you talk a little bit about how you feel that relationship with upper management and leadership and having a seat at that table, how that helps cultivate brand love, not just externally, but also internally for Huntington.
Yeah, that's a big question. And I'm sure this is something a lot of us experience, right? Like, marketing is an expense department. I think that's changing. I think we're seeing more as a revenue department as time goes on, because you can connect the numbers a little bit easier. There's a lot of like zombie movies in the past. There's an obsession with the end of the world happening in the last 10 years, which could be driven by the internet, by our phones, by the constant like barrage of information. We're just constantly worried about crises, but because of that, it's creating this like almost less faith in governing bodies. And more faith in brands. Actually, the corporate world is actually getting a little more credit for the decisions that it makes. And the consumer is using their wallet to show brands like, I align with your values, I trust what you're doing. So I think to answer your question, I just think the idea of brand is becoming a lot more important to the trajectory of a company and its balance sheet. I said earlier, you can't brand wash these things. 20 years ago in the 80s, anybody who grew up 80s and 90s watching Saturday morning cartoons, there were brands out there, but it was more about entertainment than anything. It was more about getting you to get up and ask your parents about stuff and get the sale. Now it's changed now. What you offer, what you make, what you promise has got to connect back to. Brand has to be at the seat of the innovation pipeline. We have to be at the seat of the culture, the internal culture table with HR. We have to be at the seat of training, onboarding, we affect everything. So it's funny because brand still lives in marketing in Huntington. I see a future with the best companies out there, the Patagonias of the world, really force that purpose and the reason the company exists into every aspect of the leadership table. And I think as time goes on, you're going to see more and more brand departments break out from marketing and start to be directly connected to the CEO, the head of HR, the head of technology.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think it's definitely important just to having that alignment structurally and internally, especially just knowing that consumers are demanding more, like you're saying. You no longer can just have a great product and great service, but it really is the values and your ethics as an organization that you're putting out there that's going to help retain those consumers. And you guys have done a phenomenal job at promoting that as well. So I just wanted to open it up to anyone in the audience to see if you guys had any questions for Adam.
Want to talk about banking? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to bring
I'm
the
just
mic?
curious in general about marketers looking at brands in other categories and how you view brands in other categories. You said that coming out of the pandemic, you looked at other categories for who and what you wanted to be coming out of the pandemic. Can you share a little bit about what other brands or categories you looked at and how?
Yeah, we're always taking inspiration from other categories. Huntington in 2019 shifted from an agency of record model to an in-house creative agency model. We still use external partners, but most of our creatives and strategists live in-house now. And I always try to protect them from getting too close to banking. It's important to understand the consumer, understand where the business wants to go, but the reason you use an external agency is because those people spend so much time thinking about the consumer in all aspects of their life. That's why you have lots of clients in those places. You try not to specialize too much. So just from an inspiration point of view and connecting with the consumer's needs, it's important to get out. We talk a lot about the idea of our mountaintop is called category of one. So this is an idea where if you think about Apple, Starbucks, these are brands in their categories that have no competition because they do something so different. They fill an unmet need, they disrupt. And we're always kind of hunting for that in banking. We're always kind of looking for that category of one, like distinction, where can we go that nobody else can go, that they don't have the guts to follow? Because in a commodity category, that's how you stand out, even in little ways. It's a never-ending journey. I don't think we'll ever hit that mountaintop, but it's always fun to look at other brands who are doing it in that way. Thank you. Appreciate the time.